Hello, I'm Joanne Gallagher, your Think.Future podcast host. This week, Sonali Rastogi, an internationally recognised and multi-award winning architect from India, talks to us about Morphogenesis, one of the top 100 architectural firms in the world. Join us in a minute to listen to Sonali's vision for a sustainable India. This podcast is brought to you by Arcons, a global leader pioneering solutions and services to the AEC and manufacturing industries who support digital transformation for the built environment and smart manufacturing. Visit arcons.net to learn more about how Arcons are helping organizations design, build, and solve through digitalization. From Arcons to you, welcome to our Think Future podcast series. Each week we'll share conversations with industry leaders from around the world to find out how they're thinking future. Subscribe to Arcons Think Future for access to more episodes, interviews, and profiles. Sonali Rastogi is a renowned architect and one of the founding partners of Morphogenesis, an esteemed architecture and urban design firm based in India and ranked among the top 100 architectural design firms worldwide by Building Design magazine in the UK. Sonali is a prominent speaker on sustainable architecture and has spoken on the topic at renowned universities and conferences worldwide. She is also a strong advocate for gender equality, and through her firm, she has established equal opportunity and gender pay parity as standards within the profession. Sonali's contributions have earned her over 150 international and national awards, including the prestigious World Architecture Festival Award and a recognition from the Indian Institute of Architects. Together with her business partner Manit, Morphogenesis is the sole Indian recipient of the Singapore Institute of Architects GETS Award for elevating Indian architecture on the global stage. Welcome to the program, Sonali.
Good morning, Joanne.
It's lovely to have you here.
Nice to be here.
Sonali, together with your partner Manit, you founded Morphogenesis in 1996, which is now one of the most successful architecture design companies in the world. Would you like to tell us about that journey a little bit and the highlights along the way?
It's been a long, and yet somehow seems it just started yesterday. It's been a long journey. And it started in 1996 when, prior to that, 4 years, Manit and I had spent at the Architectural Association London doing a variety of specializations. And we became deeply aware of kind of a disconnect in dialogue between what was going on in the developing world and what was the narrative in, let's say, Western narrative of architecture and design. And we somehow felt compelled to play our role in bringing Indian design conversation and dialogue as an inclusive part of a global dialogue. And coming back to India and starting Morphogenesis, the idea came from that seed. And and then, of course, one thing led to another. And maybe we'll talk about it a little bit later. But it's been a very varied journey started by two of us. And today we are over 200 members of Morphogenesis. It's now across 4 cities. What started off as a garage space borrowed from my partner's parents. Yes, so here we are.
Great story, Sonali. What has inspired you to be involved with design and architecture from the start?
I come from a family of architects. My father was an architect. My mother was an interior designer. And I think more than anything else, when I was born, my mother went out of the house to work and my father moved his studio into the house. So for me, it was like opening my bedroom door and arriving in a studio. Right. So my very first steps, so as to speak, took place in an architectural studio. And post that, my father always ran this combination of working with studio and home, either next to each other or one on top of each other or something close enough that for me, summer vacations, Sundays, actually learning how to make old-fashioned watercolor perspectives. I think my entire childhood was kind of inextricably linked to in those days what used to be the physical manifestations in the absence of digital, physical manifestations of an architect's life. Charcoal sketching, going to monuments, looking at them and sketching them, and doing perspectives, doing 1 point perspective, tying two threads to the corner of a easel. So I kind of grew up like that. So I guess it was kind of bound to happen. That's what I would love.
Sounds like you were destined for it. You grew up in that environment where you were working from home back then. Was that a common thing?
No, it was not a common thing, but it was a choice my father made.
You have 150 plus national and international awards. What were some of those and why did you get them?
It's a combination of things. One was that whilst I was at the A in London, I realized that recognition is the best way to become part of a dialogue in our profession of architecture. So the more your building gets seen, the more it gets heard, the more it gets talked about, is more likely you are to be included in a conversation, the more likely you are going to be an equal participant in the sharing of ideas and experiences, which I felt was absolutely necessary to be in a part of an inclusive design world. And so to compete, to succeed, became part of the morphogenesis DNA from the start. I think another reason why morphogenesis has been a favorite for awards is that very early on in our career, we realized that being situated in India, there was a lot that we could bring to the design world, which is either forgotten or marginalized. And it could be used to bring in a unique, sustainable architecture. So to include old, time-tested old techniques of sustainable construction, of sustainable materials, and of bringing skills of marginalized communities, which is what had made Indian architecture traditionally world famous. But now they stand marginalized. So to bring that in gives us the possibility of a bespoke quality in a very global kind of way. And this very early reliance on our history, on our culture, on our heritage, and on our people and their skills, and literally sponging off that and including it in morphogenesis architecture, I think caught the imagination of a lot of other people who are colleagues that sit in juries and to decide that morphogenesis needs to be awarded.
It sounds like you've really captured the heart and soul of India in a way where you're weaving the old traditions into modern India. Is that what I'm hearing?
That's what I'd like to believe, yes. Though there is so much more to go, it's only the tip of the iceberg. We are part of a large nation, which is sometimes even defined by people as a continent because of the variety and diversity in it. But yes, that is the mission of morphogenesis.
That is really beautiful. What has morphogenesis morphed into over the last few decades since you started?
So I think it was always intended to be a sort of a melting pot of ideas and of minds and young ideas. I think growing from 2 to over 200 has made sure that we always have fresh impetus in terms of ideas. What it has morphed into is actually 4 locations, which brings us very diverse talent pool. Because as I mentioned a little bit earlier, India is more like a continent. Like every region has its specificity, and it has cultures that are not just something for us to witness, but cultures which are brought into the studio by the people of that region who are part of morphogenesis. So being multi-locational has made us multicultural and has made us diverse. And this is a learning for me and Manit almost on a daily basis.
So you said you have 200 employees over 4 locations.
Yes.
How is the gender parity piece working at your company? How many women are employed?
So this is a very interesting question. We are always by choice, by mandate, over 51% women. And that's a call we took very early on within morphogenesis. And at that time, that call was difficult because when I graduated out of architecture school, the percentage of women was somewhere between 10 and 15% of the entire population. When my father was actually at the same college as me, it was not even 1%. And today it's an easier call because most colleges of architecture in India have more than 50% women. So, but this call was made very early on, um, because being inclusive obviously defines that both genders or both dominant genders should have representation. What was also happening was that there were stereotypes that we started to notice, that women architects were present in fields of interior design, in private residence design, in school design, but they were largely missing on the larger volume of built up area that we in India, as a developing nation, were to build, which is commercial, mass scale housing, urban infrastructure, uh, uh, so city planning. So women were missing from that segment. Uh, Secondly, we also realized that the job of an architect is very time consuming and very demanding. And due to the life cycle of a woman, to childbearing years, a lot of women went missing from the workforce at that age and to not return because it was perhaps too hard to return. So we addressed this problem very early on, and just simply by policies such as very flexible maternity policies, very, very flexible. You can come back whenever you're ready. And making the workplace very proudly free of any gender typical expectations. For example, at Morphogenesis, we celebrate all festivals, but doubly celebrate the women-related festivals of India openly. And we discuss issues of parenting, where still a large part of the parenting load is taken by women. Issues of parenting are openly discussed. Children are welcome in the studio at all points. My children grew up in my studio. They came from school directly to the studio. And they're not confined to a creche or anything. They are all over the place. So a lot of such things, policies of, and very early on enabling shopping to come to work, grocery shopping to come to work. So small changes, which we felt is what really would help shoulder some of the domestic responsibilities of women. Made it easier to make sure that every support was made possible in the years where it was required, really has made this a preferred place of work for most women at Morphogenesis. Most of them don't leave.
And how has your story impacted the conversation out in the business community where men dominate?
I would say it's even now, sometimes in certain fields, people get a little taken aback if an all-woman team comes to build some large city redevelopment project. But I think the women of Morphogenesis have made women in general more visible. So I think from late 90s, when I was playing that role, to today, I think the acceptance is much more. And eventually, I think I can say now very proudly that we played a role, the women of Morphogenesis played a role in getting the client to worry about the work, not worry about the gender of the person doing the work. And I think that's the surprise of all women team sometimes arriving for a very large project. I think it's lesser and lesser now.
Sounds like you really have changed the whole approach in India to accepting women in the workforce as equals. What is some of the social impact of this change?
So the social economic impact is that I think women who made architecture as their choice of education obviously intend to practice architecture at that point. And if various socio-economic, even cultural reasons and gender-based reasons were what was making them give up. I think that, somewhere in early 2000s, I read a census that 90% of graduating women architects drop out of the profession by mid-30s. So I think what the role, I will not take entire responsibility. There's been an army of women across the country who have been trying to change the situation. But whatever little role that I and Morphogenesis have played in this situation, um, I think firstly now when I get young architects who are graduating out of college, coming to work for their first job, I don't think it even crosses their mind that they will be meeting some glass ceiling at some point for certain parts of their job. I don't think it's any longer, I'm not saying it's disappeared, but I don't think it's a primary concern with young women any longer.
In Australia and other parts of the Western world, we're still trying to encourage more women into engineering professions and other STEM related topics such as science, technical engineering, math, those kinds of jobs. And architecture certainly falls into that category. Have you got any advice for young women that are listening around the world as a mentor? What would you say to them if they're interested in these topics?
So, the one thing that I say for every young person in this world, that you should only choose to do what you can passionately stick with against all odds. And women more so, because their life cycle is such that there will be some points in life where something becomes more important than yourself. But you've got to want it badly enough to come back to what you desire, what you want for yourself. So whether it's the profession of architecture, engineering, or creative arts, or whatever it is, it needs to be something that you love passionately enough to get back to it. And I think today's environment where some amount of staying connected with the profession can happen remotely, I think today it becomes even more possible to do that. So I just want, I would, my only advice is choose your profession carefully, the one that you can engage with so passionately that in the end, every diversion you take brings you back to where you started.
So, Sonali, you mentioned earlier when we had a chat that it was an interesting time in India. What did you mean by that in terms of sustainability?
So it's a very interesting time in India now because we are the fastest growing, one of the fastest growing nations in the world. And we have targets of growth which have not been seen in most places in the world ever for the next 10 years. And we have, that's one. Secondly, we have the youngest urban population in the world. The average age of the urban population is still in its 20s. We are going to have 18% of our country going from rural to urban in the next decade. This is one side of it, that what is the new demographics of India, that new demographic that's going to emerge. And what are we going to be providing for it in terms of built urban environment? So the job of architects and engineers today is clearly that of being nation builders. And that in itself, to me, is a huge responsibility and a huge opportunity. And which is why I find it extremely an interesting time. Another aspect is India's voice has become globally very important due to various socio-political, economic reasons or geopolitics. We have set targets to take leadership in the sustainability sector. We have set very ambitious targets to go net zero by 2070. Now, if I link this back to my basic architectural education, where the regular concrete steel building has an optimum lifetime of 70 years before it needs to be refurbished. I'm sitting in a window of less than 70 years for me to reach that target of net zero. But a lot of it will be built in the next 10 years. So just the sheer logic of it, that if the next 10 years I don't build in a net zero way, those buildings is something I'll have to mitigate down the line in order to meet the net zero target in 2070. So that it just doesn't make sense to be anything but net zero now. You know, it's not, it's if I keep on building the way I'm building, then it's a futile exercise. So that is one part of sustainability. The other part is that this amount of rural population becoming urban, a lot of it uh, skilled or skilled in traditional forms of knowledge, some of it semi-skilled and some of it almost completely rural agrarian, and with not much opportunity of that skill finding its way into the urban life. So to think about how is this workforce going to get channelized into building a tomorrow for India, uh, and in an inclusive way, because they are not just the migrants, they're also the workforce for this next 10-year period and further from there. So this is the opportunity I feel where we have to understand the skill they bring, and we have to very rapidly marry to technology so that it becomes scalable, and it's not just sort of a promotion of crafts at a localized scale. It needs to move up from that scale. It needs to become mass scale in order to absorb these large masses into the system. So, tradition meets technology has to be part of our social sustainability agenda. And the word I want to use, that if we are successful in doing that, we will reach a bespoke future for architecture. So this is something that I'm thinking about a lot. These are my internal conversations in my head. These are the conversations I'm having with you and with many other people, because this is now I think the a fledgling manifesto for me, and part of the manifesto for morphogenesis, which very much wants to be part of this nation building exercise.
We're going to take a short break to tell you a little bit more about Archons, and then we'll be right back to the conversation. Archons has a mission to advance the efficiency, quality, and profitability of project outcomes for its customers by providing best-in-class technology and services. If you're looking for a digitalization and sustainability-focused partner to help you achieve your goals, join the thousands of AEC and manufacturing customers globally who have turned to Archons to start their journey toward a better built environment and smarter manufacturing. With more than 50 locations around the world, Archons can connect you to the right technologies and expertise so you can improve your competitive position and increase profitability. Archons has an industry expert to help you navigate the best pathway forward wherever you are on your digitalization and sustainability journey. Visit archons.net to find out more. And now back to our conversation. Design is really the key to everything we want in the future and now. Our partner, World Green Building Council, they released a circularity playbook, which is one of the levers for sustainable design.
Yes.
And it's through the idea of circularity, meaning that when we break things down at the end of life, we can reuse them and so on. So design for disassembly would come into that. And we also need resources such as water.
Yes.
Is another publication they've come out with for the built environment, because all of the things we do in private and business life will need water. Is design around water circularity part of your thinking at the moment?
It is, and absolutely has been, because water has, whilst we are surrounded by oceans and rivers, but water has been a scarce resource in India for a very long time. When I was growing up in this country, the piped water supply came in for 2 hours in the morning and 2 hours in the evening, and rest of the time, and we stored it in buckets and used it judiciously throughout the day. So this is what I grew up with in the 80s and 90s. So this is something that wasting water is kind of not an idea I can deal with at all. But at Morphogenesis, our attempt is to really understand that what is the holding capacity of the land for the amount of natural resource available, what kind of mitigation should happen so that we are not impacting the environment adversely. So we use the water supply, we use the rainwater, we recharge ground, we use overflow water and we take it through almost all, so no water is intending to ever leave the site. So all water, 100% is always recycled in each and every project. And now some of the rating systems are actually giving you credit for not connecting back into the disposal system of the city, if you can recycle the entire thing. So, in fact, my own office, which is called Morpho 41, we have no connection to the public sewage system.
So you're saying that everything that you're using in your company is recycled water? The water is recycled, completely recycled?
Yes, 100% recycled all the time. It doesn't connect back.
Sonali, at Morphogenesis, you use a term called soul, SOUL. Can you please tell us a bit more about what that means?
So these are the 4 principles which form the building block of for our approach to design, which means we have to think about sustainability, which till recently used to be the energy metrics. Now we have added the notion of social sustainability to it, which is how we are including marginalized communities in the process of sustainability. Always optimization, which means to get the best out of the resources you're using. So if a project requires to be 100% air conditioned, my desire is to convince them that certain parts can be non-air conditioned. But in the absence of that, what is the best result I can achieve by using the least energy that satisfies the client brief? So optimization is an important part. Unique. Unique is a combination of an ambition to create architecture of impact. Our nation has always had that. I mean, even if today you were to Google search and say, my holiday to India, I mean, 50% of the pictures that would show up would be buildings and then some food and some clothes. So we've always had a tradition of people taking pride in their architecture, right? Whether it's the village, mirror-clad village hut, or whether it's the Taj Mahal, or whether it's Fatehpur Sikri, and the list is endless. So we've always had a tradition of trying to create iconic, I will use the fashionable word iconic manifestations of architecture. Now, unique for us signifies that because our climate, our context, material, culture, people can really help us, these inspirations, to create unique pieces of architecture, which are inspiring. Okay. Livability. So livability is a well-known concept where we talk about wellness, we talk about including technology, but Morphogenesis' way of thinking about livability is think about every person who will be in that building, not just the client brief. So think about the people who will just visit the building. Think about people who will supply to the building. Think about people who will be servicing the building. Think about it. For example, in India, it's very important. Think about celebrations, mourning, and festivals. Simple things like old people like to come down and sit together. So in our housing societies, where are these people sitting together? They don't want to sit together in parks where our temperatures are hitting 45 degrees Celsius, or we're having extreme monsoon, or we are having cold, or we are having fog or frost. So think about how people like to live. So whilst they're changing, like we're going to high-rise housing, and people in the cities are going to live there. But there is a traditional way where the young have interacted, where the old elderly have interacted, okay, where we deal with others from the community. Community life is very important for us. So we do not want to rob people of centuries of ways they know to say, now you're going to move into this high rise. Yes, they are going to move into it. Urbanization will ask for that to happen, but not to lose their ways of living is what livability is. So SOUL stands for these 4 things. And they are basic. They're basic building blocks for thinking. They are not any prescription for an ism of architecture.
Like a framework. So did you say the social was the first one? Social sustainability?
Sustainability, which includes social sustainability. energy sustainability and social sustainability. O, which is optimization and to get the best out of the resources we have. Unique is unique, to create a unique architecture. And livable is to be mindful of how people live.
You mentioned the vision for India by 2070. Do you have an intermediate goal in the meantime?
Yes, there are several intermediate goals that we have to be free of fossil fuel by X amount of time. We have to be free of this, free of that. But I think they are right now just, for the lack of a better word, I would say they're a wish list. I think now is the time for various professions to formulate the way forward.
What type of skills do you see will be needed in the next 10 years?
I think skills, one of the reasons I was very excited to be in India at this time is because I think our population has invested so much in education that we have almost all the skill sets that we need. I think we have the largest number of graduating engineers anywhere in the world every year in this country. We now have, from when I went to architecture school, we had 20 architecture schools across the country. To now, I've lost count. I mean, I don't want to even guess, but maybe we have over 10,000 architecture schools. I don't know. That number could be wrong, but it's just like they're everywhere, right? So, so I'm not that concerned that we are not equipped to do it. I think what we need is a common language that we are all speaking. That yes, we should be speaking the same language for growth and not going all over the place. So, similar target, similar vision, approached by different people in different with different skill sets. What we need is a common growth vision. I don't think skills is an issue. I mean, look at the if going by computation and AI and the trending skills that the world is trying to now latch on to. I mean, India has had an IT revolution since the 90s and has formed the backbone of a lot of countries in the world for the IT revolutions. So I'm not concerned about having skill sets. I'm concerned that to have a unified vision for growth.
So we're talking about, circular economy and the growth around the economy in a circular way now, not linear. Is that what you mean? That is not clear across everybody yet, or?
So circular economy, absolutely. But also I am kind of anxious that we waited too long already. We need to have started on our net zero energy path with measurable achievements, not just a feel good factor way of approaching things. And that's what I want to see. I want to see very clear targets that this is what we are doing for pollution and it needs to be done by now. This is what we are doing for carbon emission and needs to be done by now. This is what we are doing for increased amount of clean water, potable water supply. This is what I really want to see is a national urbanization map. Like, I don't want to see maps with state boundaries or geographical boundaries. I want to see a resource distribution map for the country. Where are people? Where is energy resources? Where is least damage to planet Earth? And if we follow this map for growth.
When you speak of growth, Sonali, you of course mean sustainable development growth.
Yes, because otherwise, if this urbanization, for example, the current urbanization trends have been focusing on people moving into the existing city. And India has 4 of the 10 world's largest cities which are imploding because the infrastructure cannot handle anymore. So I need to see a more concrete location plans, if you were to just as simple as that, of how we are going to grow, where is the new architecture going to be. Like, for example, when we built the Surat Dynamos, which is outside Surat, which is a small but very successful city in India. And it's on the outskirts of that. And it's on a new city called Dream City, which is a new urbanization center. And the Seed building was the world's largest office building. And that is a very good example in my mind. Because it's not It's piggybacking off Surat, but going to make Surat implode. So, so I need to see more of that. I need to see where the new buildings will come, where the new infrastructure will come, and I guess planners have a big role to play in India's growth.
Yes, so Sonali, that's very interesting. Having a common definition for sustainable development is half the battle. As you said, having a common language and understanding of our vision together, that's really where the work needs to happen. So what does this mean for social sustainability in India as time goes on?
So what this means for social sustainability is that it's important that the skills of the incoming rural to urban migration is absorbed into the system in the first place. I mean, we cannot wait for them to, we cannot wait for them to acquire new urban skills. And so therefore we have to absorb, transform, edit with technology and upskill into a new kind of skill, which is taking cognizance of what they bring with them and making them more future ready for our growth story. This process should have already begun. So I'm quite anxious that then we've already lost some time. So I'm happy to be addressing it every day at work. And I think that's the common vision and language I want to hear from everywhere, that it's being addressed every day. India is the third largest energy user in the world after America and China. Of course, we are not even 1/4 of the world average because America and China use a lot of energy. So we are much lower in consumption, but we are still third. And 40% of our energy consumption happens due to construction, 40%. So they are very large just because as a nation, we are very large. So there are a lot of large numbers to be addressed. And that's where I think India's role becomes important. Because whilst our per capita consumption may not be very high, but we are a very large nation. So we have a large responsibility.
So in terms of the return on investment, meaning economic, environmental, and social investment for India, what does success look like?
Success in India looks like, I guess, maybe in many ways what it looks like everywhere else in the world, is that part of your vision comes true, your voice gets heard, you find yourself in the fortunate position of representing part of your architecture and design community. Important part of that is to stay tuned, to be hearing. A large part of success is to hear and transmit, right? And that's where of course, it's important at a personal level. It's important to see your lifetime work get recognition, to see yourself being talked about and your design philosophy being talked about. But that's a small part of it. That is only, I guess, your personal ego gratification. But if you have people who join your language and your vision and your thought process, then the dissemination of the idea becomes much larger than the self. And that's when you see more people talking that way, who become more successful than you, who are building more, when building well, and providing for more. And you think, oh my God, I was part of setting this up. I think that's where true success lies.
You're leaving a legacy for future generations.
I'd like to be, yes. I sometimes younger colleagues at work say that. And absolutely, I think the reason traditions flourish is because of legacy making. And if you look at any form of art, craft, architecture, building, eventually very few names are remembered, but an entire genre is remembered more, right? So I think if I have played any part in legacy building of what is contemporary Indian architecture, I am personally very satisfied, but I think true measure of it will be when the work recognizes this phase of Indian architecture as something that made an important impact in this world.
That's a great segue into the last question, Sonali. When you think future for India, what comes to mind? What warms your heart and excites you the most?
What comes to my mind is a decentralized model of urbanization in India, where there are lots of very interesting cities with brilliant pieces of architecture which are yet to be begun. I see students from around the world traveling to India in the next 10 years and seeing these buildings and understanding them as exemplars for growth for rest of the world. Because see, rest of the world is not building as much as we are. So we have this brilliant opportunity to become the flag bearers for what the future of the world should be. And in terms of architecture, I see India poised to take global leadership for a sustainable, sensitive, technologically advanced, contextually rich, and energy and socially sustainable architecture. And I really want to see architecture tourism take on a new meaning when India leads this this process across the next 10 years.
Sounds very exciting. I'd love to come to India and see what you've achieved within the next 10 to 20 years. Thank you so much, Sonali. If someone wanted to reach out to you, what's the best way to contact you?
Email to Megha and me both.
Okay. Thank you very much for your time today, Sonali. I look forward to hearing from you again soon. This podcast was brought to you by Arcons. Arcons is leading the digital transformation of the AEC and manufacturing industries by providing best-in-class technology solutions from world-leading partners and their own in-house development software from the Arcons BeSmart portfolio for building, infrastructure and manufacturing. Arcons is a company that cares about creating and building a better world. Together, we are working with industry and environmental experts, providing forums and platforms through our Arcons Think community to create conversations that matter to our future generations. We invite you to join in the conversation and participate in our Think community. Like and subscribe to Think.Future to stay up to date with the latest innovations and conversations as we advance the digital journey for the AEC and manufacturing around the world. You can download our podcasts at arcons.net or from your favorite podcast platform.